Buried in a sealed drawer inside a forgotten estate, Princess Eugenie stumbles upon a letter. Not just any letter, one carrying the wax seal of King Edward VIII. But what lies within sends tremors through the monarchy. A testament, naming Prince Andrew as heir to a secret legacy. How could a disgraced monarch from nearly a century ago change everything? Now, before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It began with an invitation for quiet retreat to a lesser-known royal estate nestled far from the public eye. Princess Eugenie had no intention of stumbling upon the past. She was searching for solitude, reflection, anything but royal drama. But fate, it seems, had other plans. Wandering through the old study, she noticed a grand desk, carved with symbols she didn't recognize. One drawer wouldn't open. The lock was rusted shut, but curiosity, that ever-dangerous royal trait, drove her to persist. With a determined twist and a bit of force, the drawer gave way. Inside, brittle parchment, faded ink, and a letter sealed with deep red wax, a symbol from another time, another king, another crisis. She recognized it instantly. The wax bore the royal insignia of Edward VIII, the king who walked away from the crown, the man who gave it all up for love, or so history claimed. But what was this? The document didn't read like a personal letter or a formal state file. It was a testament, deliberate, passionate, unsettling. It spoke not of regrets, but of a legacy unfinished. Edward had written, in painfully precise language, about a future debt owed to the bloodline once denied by history's heavy hand. He referenced a second son, not his own, but someone yet to come. A man who will, like me, be cast aside by the throne's cold mechanics, it read. To him I leave what was meant to be mine. Eugenie's breath caught. The second son. In royal lineage, the phrase had always carried weight. Edward was the eldest, but his fate had rewritten succession. Was this a metaphor, or something far more literal? Her eyes scanned for more. The testament included subtle references to accounts, to unseen properties, to an inheritance financial and symbolic. Her mind raced to her own father, Prince Andrew, the second son of Queen Elizabeth II, a man fallen from grace, scandalous, shamed, but now inexplicably tied to the echoes of another royal exile. The paper trembled in her hands. Was it even real, or some elaborate fabrication? And if it was genuine, what would it mean if the world found out? This wasn't just a note, it was a declaration, a ghost from the past, reaching out with cold fingers to the present, a possible time bomb buried beneath the glitter of the monarchy. Eugenie, gripped by a mix of fear and fascination, tucked the letter away, her heart pounding. She didn't tell a soul, not yet. She needed time. But in royal circles, silence doesn't last long. Somewhere between her hesitation and the next sunrise, rumors had already begun to stir, but as whispers leak through palace corridors, royal advisors begin circling, afraid of a truth they thought buried forever. History says Edward VIII abdicated for love, but what if that was only part of the story? His exile was filled with resentment not just toward the crown, but toward those who silenced him. His secret testament may reveal a long game of vengeance, and Prince Andrew was always meant to be the pawn. What the world saw in 1936 was a romantic tragedy, the king who gave up everything for Wallis Simpson. But behind closed doors, Edward's departure wasn't soft, nor was it noble. It was seething. In the shadows of his exile, Edward VIII did not fade quietly. He wrote, he plotted, and above all he remembered. Letters now surfacing from Eugenie's shocking discovery paint a far more sinister portrait. The bitterness didn't die with the abdication, it deepened. His words were soaked in fury at the institution he once led. The bitterness wasn't aimed solely at the system, but at the brother who took the throne, and the bloodline that followed. George VI may have become king, but Edward believed he was the rightful visionary, betrayed by cowardice and tradition. And while the public saw him strolling through gardens in France, Edward was drafting what he called the real legacy, a long-term plan to reclaim what he believed was stolen, even if it meant doing so from beyond the grave. Buried within the hidden testament are letters cold, deliberate, coded, They suggest he maintained clandestine contact with certain royal staff for decades. Not many, but enough to ensure his writings weren't lost. There are names blurred in ink but traceable, loyal courtiers who believed in the modern king. In these letters he spoke of a future champion, a man cast aside, misunderstood by his own blood, whom Rai would judge too harshly. A vessel for vindication. A mirror of my fall, Edward wrote. He will come not to rule, but to reveal. Through him, justice will be remembered. And then, almost prophetically, Edward writes of the dangers of monarchy left unchecked, of the second sons, fated to be weapons or warnings. The words echo now with chilling resonance. Eugenie's discovery isn't just a curiosity from a dead king, it's a blueprint. The language Edward used vivid, venomous mirrors the public fall of Prince Andrew. The same shunning, the same media storm, the same family silence. Edward had been discarded. Now so had Andrew. And Edward seemed to believe that was by design, as if history repeated itself not by accident, but by royal architecture. There is one letter in particular faintly signed with Edward's symbol that speaks of a lock to count, tied to a royal bloodline hidden until shame breeds sympathy. The words drip with eerie foresight. Eugenie, reading it alone under the dim light of scandal, realized the gravity. Her father was not just disgraced, he was selected. Maybe not by fate, but by a bitter king with a century-old grudge and the means to twist time's knife. If Edward had one last move to play, it wouldn't be made until long after his death through someone just as controversial. Once a decorated war hero, now a royal pariah. Prince Andrew's downfall was no accident, it was prophecy, or so the hidden testament implies. Could Edward have foreseen Andrew's exile? Or was he shaping it from the grave? The story of Prince Andrew has long been one of contradiction, honor turned into shame, privilege corrupted by scandal. But through the lens of Edward's hidden testament, a chilling symmetry begins to emerge. Like Edward, Andrew was once hailed as a golden figure within the royal family. Charming, defiant, and reckless, he basked in attention and seemed to relish his role on the edge of tradition. In his youth, he flew helicopters, won public admiration, and was known for his bold confidence. But beneath the medals and public appearances, there was a growing distance, a quiet resentment toward the expectations that came with royalty. The parallels are too precise to dismiss. Edward, too, was once beloved, but he challenged protocol, broke expectations, and was exiled for it. The uncanny reflection between their fates casts a long, unsettling shadow over everything Eugenie had uncovered. Edward's language within the testament grows increasingly symbolic. He speaks of a mirror, a man whose disgrace would awaken the very fault lines that buried Edward himself. The deeper Eugenie delves into the papers, the more personal they become. Edward didn't just predict a fall, he prepared for it. Among the most disturbing revelations are cryptic references to accounts set for the exile, money intended not for power, but for disruption. Investigators now speculate that Edward, through private European channels, established hidden trusts, and the N.A. tied most frequently to those dormant legacies. Andrew, a man who decades later would find himself under siege, both publicly and privately, and curiously cushioned by untraceable wealth. The idea that Edward laid the groundwork for Andrew's re-emergence isn't just shocking, it's terrifying. One document, nearly destroyed by time, includes what appears to be coded instructions. "Prepare the vessel," it reads. "He will not know until the fire begins." What did Edward mean? That Andrew's disgrace was essential? That his downfall was a signal for a greater reckoning? The implications were too complex for Eugenie to fully grasp, but they gnawed at her. This wasn't just about her father's innocence or guilt. It was about whether he had ever had a choice. And Eugenie, caught in the vortex of legacy and loyalty, felt herself unraveling. Every answer brought more uncertainty. Did her father know about this? Had he been used? Or had he silently embraced the role Edward cast for him, waiting for the right moment to reclaim something deeper than reputation? The monarchy had long protected its myths, but this was no myth. This was a blueprint drawn in anger, stitched into the seams of royal blood. Eugenie stood at the threshold of exposing it all, yet feared what that truth might truly cost. But Eugenie wasn't alone for long. Me 5, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the Queen's private secretary all got wind of it. Before the press got a whiff, royal advisors locked the palace down. Once disappeared. Guards doubled, for the first time since Diana's death. Buckingham Palace went into emergency protocol, because if this testament went public, it wouldn't just rewrite history, it would destroy the monarchy. The document was never supposed to see the light of day. And yet, it had surfaced through the most unexpected hands and under the most volatile of circumstances. The moment whispers of its contents reached the ears of senior palace advisors, the atmosphere within royal walls turned to ice. What began as quiet rumblings soon triggered an all-out lockdown. Emergency protocols dormant since the tragic death of Diana were reactivated without hesitation. Meetings were held in soundproof rooms, entry logs burned, phones confiscated from staff. Only the highest-ranking officials were summoned, each carrying the weight of decades of secrets on their backs. What they faced was not just a scandal, but a potential unraveling of the very architecture the monarchy had built its survival upon. Inside those shadowed briefings, panic reigned. The advisors knew what they were dealing with: Edward VIII's written vengeance. And within that testament, one phrase in particular haunted them: let the bloodline reckon with the truth it buried. Suddenly, it wasn't just about Prince Andrew's disgrace or Eugenie's discovery. It was about a legacy they had spent generations trying to erase. The thought of Andrew, already a public pariah, possibly using the document to manipulate public sympathy or demand restitution sent chills down their spines. He could flip the narrative, position himself not as a disgraced royal, but as a chosen one wronged twice over by history and by family. That narrative, if weaponized, could split the royal image beyond repair. But there was a deeper concern, one that had never truly faded from the institution's memory: Edward's foreign entanglements. His alleged sympathies during the Second World War, his rumoured dialogues with hostile governments, topics buried in classified archives and whispered about only behind locked doors. If the testament exposed any lingering ties, or worse, financial trails, the monarchy wouldn't just face public backlash, it could find itself in constitutional peril. That's when the order went out. Scotland Yard's Royal Protection Unit was discreetly contacted. Their task was twofold: locate the origin of the document and trace every person who had seen or touched it. And at the top of that list was Eugenie. Though still a beloved granddaughter of the late Queen, Eugenie was now viewed as a liability. Surveillance began quietly. Her movements were tracked, her calls monitored. Even her husband was questioned under the guise of routine protocol. The palace didn't want to act rashly, but they couldn't afford to act slowly either. The crown had survived abdications, divorces, even death. But it had never faced a ghost this dangerous, nor a document this incendiary. In the eyes of the monarchy's inner circle, this wasn't just about protecting an image, it was about preventing collapse. One wrong move, one public leak, and the foundations could crack. But she wasn't about to be silenced, not when the very legacy of the monarchy and her father's fate hung in the balance. Daughter, princess, insider, spy? Eugenie holds the key to a legacy that could either restore her father's honor or plunge the monarchy into chaos. Her heart aches for truth, but every move is watched, and behind every shadow, someone is pulling strings. With the palace now circling like wolves, Eugenie found herself walking a line so thin it felt invisible. The document in her possession wasn't just paper, it was power. It whispered promises of redemption for her father, yet thundered with threats against everything the monarchy stood upon. She told no one except her husband, Jack. Late one night, after locking every door in their home, she revealed the testament's contents. His response was immediate: burn it, walk away, let sleeping monarchs lie. But she couldn't, because behind the shame and scandal surrounding Andrew, she saw something else now, not just disgrace but design. And if Edward had foreseen this downfall decades in advance, then what else had been manipulated along the way? The conflict inside her tore her apart. Every day brought new doubt. Could she be the one to expose a plan that had survived generations? Did she owe the truth to the public, or was her duty still to the crown that raised her? Her instincts told her to run. Her blood told her to stay. So she did what few royals ever dared. She began digging, not through palaces or archives, but through people. Silent names mentioned in Edward's letters, former aides, obscure titles, men and women erased from official records but alive in footnotes and family rumor. And slowly, patterns emerged. Edward had allies, quiet ones, wealthy ones, the kind who kept their loyalty long after the world stopped looking. Her search led her to foreign records, traces of financial movements buried in Swiss accounts, linked by blood and silence. There were rumors of relics stored during wartime, not just in vaults, but in private collections scattered across Europe. Eugenie wasn't just chasing a legacy anymore, she was chasing a ghost, one that had left behind a trail of whispers in ledgers and coded letters. One journal entry she penned, hidden deep inside a locked drawer, posed a haunting question: if the truth destroys us, is silence truly better? In that same entry, she admitted she had drafted a press statement, complete with scans of the document, but she hadn't sent it. Not yet. That hesitation wasn't fear, it was calculation. Because while she was being watched, she was also being approached. Palace intermediaries, some cloaked in kindness, others in carefully worded threats, began to reach out. They didn't directly ask her to hand it over. Instead, they offered alternatives, charity opportunities, titles for her children. A qui, it visit with the king, all thinly veiled bribes. And when none of that worked, the tone shifted. A leaked rumor here, a cancelled engagement there. Pressure applied where it hurt the most, through silence, through exclusion, through the cold machinery of royal punishment. But Eugenie endured, because somewhere in the middle of her pain and defiance, she knew this wasn't just about her father. It was about the monarchy's decision to erase what didn't fit and how far it would go to protect the illusion of control. But the more she digs, the deeper the conspiracy goes, and it leads to someone far closer than she ever imagined. What if Charles always knew? A sealed envelope in the king's private files reveals chilling truth. Edward's testament was no myth. And Charles made a vow to his mother long ago to never let it surface. Now, his throne hangs in the balance. Long before Eugenie's discovery, before Andrew's disgrace made headlines, and before the whispers of Edward's vengeance resurfaced, a young Prince Charles had already been told the truth. It came in the form of a private conversation, just him and the Queen, spoken in hushed tones beneath the towering ceilings of Windsor. She had shown him a sealed envelope, its wax faded but intact, stamped with the unmistakable insignia of a king long erased from active memory. Inside was not the original, but a summary typed, annotated, and terrifying. Elizabeth had called it a sleeper threat, a document capable of setting fire to everything they had worked to preserve. She had locked it away, quite literally, buried beneath layers of royal protection in the Windsor archives. Her message to Charles was clear: this must never surface, not while the monarchy still breathes. And so Charles carried that burden for years, through scandals, through wars, through the rise and fall of global empires. He had always believed the matter settled, contained, forgotten, until now. When Eugenie stepped into the firestorm, Charles's blood ran cold. The version she found wasn't the one from Windsor. It was a duplicate, uncannily preserved, and worse, it was circulating. Advisors scrambled to determine where it had come from. Had it been planted? Had someone breached the vault? Or had Edward left more than one trail, anticipating that history might one day try to erase him entirely? None of the answers soothed Charles, because the damage was already unfolding and the timing could not be worse. With William being primed for eventual succession, Charles's priority had always been stability, a clean handover, a graceful exit. But now, with Edward's ghost pulling strings from the grave, that plan teetered on collapse. Every new whisper about Andrew's connection to a hidden legacy made Charles appear complicit. He feared the implications not only for his son's future, but for his own reign, already fragile under the scrutiny of a modern world. Behind palace doors, a stark realization set in: the truth had no loyalty. It didn't About legacy, lineage, or duty. It only waited for someone to let it breathe. Despite his affection for Eugenie, Charles now saw her as a variable too dangerous to ignore. She had stumbled into something larger than herself, and worse, she wouldn't back down. Every attempt to coax her into silence had failed. She was playing a game no one had prepared her for, and Charles understood what had to be done. Orders were issued, not spoken aloud in meetings, but passed quietly through secure channels. Retrieve the document, discredit it if necessary, and if that failed, make sure no one else ever saw it. The Crown couldn't afford another Windsor scandal. Not again, not now. But in royal politics, nothing stays hidden. A rogue royal insider leaks a portion of the testament, and the media explodes. Edward names Andrew his true heir. The headline hits every major outlet. The Crown goes into lockdown. The public, once divided on Andrew, is now asking dangerous questions. Was he a victim or the king in waiting? It started with a single scan, a grainy, partial image of Edward VIII's lost testament uploaded anonymously to an overseas journalist with a history of unraveling royal secrets. The document was damning, but it was the phrasing that detonated like a bomb. To the second son, I leave what was denied to me by blood and by right. Within hours, the headline made front pages around the globe. Edward names Andrew his true heir. The fallout was immediate. The palace scrambled, not to deny it, but to contain the wildfire. Public curiosity became obsession. Commentators speculated wildly. And suddenly, the narrative around Andrew shifted. No longer was he just the disgraced duke exiled by scandal, he was the possible heir to a legacy deliberately buried by the House of Windsor. Social media platforms exploded. Hashtags surged. Justice for Andrew trended alongside Crown conspiracy as thousands began re-examining every decision made since Edward's abdication. Conspiracy theorists connected the dots, imagined or not, between Diana's tragic death, Andrew's downfall, Epstein's shadow, even Miss Six. Everyone had a theory, and none of them were quiet. Forums unearthed long-forgotten footage of Andrew as a naval hero, calling him the royal that was made to fall. Every thread pointed to one dangerous idea, that perhaps Andrew wasn't ruined by his choices, but by a plan orchestrated long before he was born. In the midst of the chaos, Charles appeared briefly on camera, his face unreadable, his words careful. He called the document a matter of deep historical complexity and urged the public not to speculate in absence of truth. It was meant to calm, but it only fanned the flames. His avoidance of direct denial was seen as admission. William, more media-savvy and future-focused, made no comment at all. Behind the scenes, however, he was reported to be livid. Sources close to the heir suggested he was already working to distance himself from the growing firestorm, one that threatened to pull his own reign into question before it even began. And through it all, Eugenie remained silent. But her silence wasn't surrender, it was defiance. Within royal circles, she had become the symbol of quiet rebellion. The woman who lit the match, and now watched the institution squirm under the weight of truths it had buried for generations. Some called her dangerous, others brave. But no one could ignore her. As the monarchy scrambled to find footing, the story had already escaped the palace walls. It was no longer theirs to control. The public had tasted blood, and they wanted more. But in a twist no one predicted, Andrew himself finally breaks his silence. He steps into the camera's eye not as a disgraced duke, but as the forgotten heir. Andrew speaks not of guilt, but of bloodline. And with one move he threatens to shatter centuries of protocol with 3 words, "I am Edward's legacy." The announcement came without warning. No press teasers, no palace clearance. Just a time, a place, and a single live broadcast scheduled through a private channel. When the camera lit up, it wasn't the crumbling figure the public had grown used to. Prince Andrew sat with a composure few expected, calm, unapologetic, not rehearsed but resolved, and when he spoke, it wasn't to plead innocence or apologize again for past associations. It was to claim something far older, far deeper. I was not chosen by the public. Was chosen by blood, he said, eyes unflinching. Edward VIII left behind more than a scandal. He left behind a mission. And I am Edward's legacy. It was not a demand for power, nor a request for sympathy, it was a declaration of lineage. Andrew didn't attack the crown directly, but the undertones were impossible to miss. He spoke of systems that punish quietly, of truths buried beneath ceremonial smiles. He never named names, but each word cut through layers of royal insulation. He painted a picture not of a man who fell, but of a man pushed by an institution designed to protect only its chosen. And in doing so, he dragged the monarchy's deepest fears into the spotlight, that perhaps it wasn't scandal that broke him, but strategy. The impact was instantaneous. Commentators scrambled to interpret the message. Was it a confession cloaked in legacy, or a threat dressed as truth? Viewers were split down the middle. Some saw bravery, others manipulation. For many, it was the first time Andrew didn't appear to be hiding. And yet the silence from Buckingham was louder than any speech. No denials, no clarifications, just a pause, long and deliberate, as the world watched the monarchy flinch. In the hours that followed, secret discussions erupted within Parliament. Constitutional experts were consulted, because if the legacy Andrew spoke of was real, and if there was evidence to support it, the very rules of succession could be called into question. Quietly, legal teams began reviewing precedents, tracing the path of lineage back to Edward's abdication. For the first time in generations, the royal family was no longer just a ceremonial entity. It had become a contested institution. Meanwhile, Eugenie's silence deepened. Her presence lingered like a ghost behind Andrew's words, her role undeniable but undefined. The press dubbed her the royal rebel, while insiders whispered that she had become the monarchy's most dangerous liability. And yet, she made no appearances, issued no statements. Her absence spoke louder than any interview. Because this moment, this revelation had not just reshaped her father's narrative. It had begun to rewrite the monarchy's story altogether. But with the kingdom in uproar, one final act of truth and betrayal is about to erupt from within the family itself. The future king draws a line in the sand. William calls a private family council and issues a stark ultimatum: end the chaos, bury the testament forever, or face exile. But Eugenie has one final card to play, and it may destroy everything. The meeting took place behind sealed doors, far from press speculation, courtiers and cameras. No aides, no scribes, just four names: William, Charles, Andrew, and Eugenie, brought together by blood, divided by truth. The atmosphere was brittle with silence, each one carrying the weight of a crumbling dynasty on their shoulders. William, now forced into a role beyond heir guardian of the realm's future, opened the discussion with chill. Clarity. The monarchy, he said, could no longer survive contradiction. There would be no room for legacy games, no tolerance for whispered rebellions. The testament had to be destroyed, its origins denied, its influence erased. The family must emerge unified or splinter forever. His voice was steady, but the ultimatum was ice: comply or be cast out. Charles sat heavy in his chair, torn between the man he had become and the son he once was. He had long carried the secret of Edward's testament in silence, believing his promise to his mother would keep the monarchy safe. But now, that silence had fermented into guilt. He didn't argue, but he didn't immediately agree. The truth, after all, had been buried once on his command, and now it refused to stay buried. When he finally spoke, it was with a tremor not of fear, but of exhaustion. "We were wrong to believe we could outrun this," he said, "but we must still decide who pays the price." And then Eugenie stood, not with defiance, but with calm purpose. She placed a small leather-bound notebook on the table, weathered, marked, and unmistakably old. Edward's handwriting. A third copy. One that no one in the room had seen before. A version unfiltered, unduplicated, and signed. It confirmed everything, every intention, every accusation. And it was clear this document wouldn't be stopped. Not now. Not by force, not by silence, not by exile. The family had a choice: control the story, or let it consume them. Andrew, who had sat quietly until now, broke his silence with a proposal. He would step back permanently. No more interviews, no more shadow campaigns. He would leave public life completely, disappear from view. But on one condition, his daughter, Princess Beatrice, would be formally elevated in the royal line of succession, not as heir, but as symbol, recognition, a nod to the legacy that had been erased and now rewritten. It was a bold demand, but not impossible. William resisted, Charles hesitated, but Eugenie's final words tipped the scales. If we erase Edward again, we lose more than a name. We lose every part of ourselves that ever dared to be honest. The deal was made. The third copy would be sealed, not destroyed. Andrew would vanish into quiet retreat. Beatrice would rise, not to power, but to acknowledgement. And the monarchy would survive, but never again untouched. The crown remained, but the cracks had been carved into its foundation, not by enemies, but by its own. As the meeting ended and the royals returned to their roles, nothing looked different. But everything had changed. History wasn't rewritten. It had merely caught up. And as the palace gates close and the cameras retreat, a final whisper echoes through the royal halls. What other secrets lie waiting in the shadows? Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.